which did not come. Percival held on to Elund, certain he must, for he had witnessed her utter self-sacrifice and loyalty to Camelot, despite so much risk to herself. From across the field, Merlin, who was carefully repelling the wyvern until it finally forgot why it had been summoned, yelled across to Percival and then sprinted across to them. Elund had regained a little consciousness and was now struggling with Percival until he let her go. Aeled! Merlin shouted again and reached Elund just as she slumped against a mossy stone wall at the edge of the grain store. Arthur was only a few paces behind, his great sword dripping with the black mud of the valley. Steady, steady, Merlin breathed, reaching out to catch Elund's shoulders, getting between her and Percival as he did so. But when he made to touch her, to ease her to the ground, his hands recoiled, for Aeled's tunic leather was shredded and soaked, not just with blood, but with a strange, shimmering fluid that smelled of sulfur and ancient, stagnant water. Her breath became uneven as she panted for air. Merlin undid her helmet strap, holding her in his arms. The wound was not a clean strike. Where the steel had pierced her ribcage, the flesh wasn't just bleeding, it was pulsing. Beneath the skin, a sickly, violet light flickered rhythmically, like a second, dying heart. Small, crystalline shards were sticking into her flesh from the wyvern's clawing of her, embedded into her muscle, glowing with a parasitic energy that seemed to be living on her life force. Around them, the villagers were recovering. Very few had been injured or killed. Arthur's training of them and defense with the knights had worked to good effect. Not far away, Elund heard Arthur cursing the Saxon for using magic and conjuring the wyvern, then heard boots beside her. It is a wound of the old religion, Bishop Dewey proclaimed on the other side of Elund, looking at the damage to her back and side. Others, too, began to crowd round, a sight to see that he was a Saxon warrior who had turned and defended the Prince of Camelot, and with it, making his comrades scatter. "Why care you about this mercenary, Merlin?" Arthur scoffed as he stood beside the bishop. Merlin looked back up to his master, a shiver of shock passed through him. "He saved your life, sire." Merlin moved Elund's hair to one side. "And do you not recognize him?" Arthur crouched a little closer and squinted at Elund's face. "Why, it's a broken bar." He looked back to Merlin, "The guard who got the mortuous flower to a broken bar saved your life. A broken bar went to Bayard's kingdom. A broken bar. Whatever he is doing in Odin's service." Then, Percival added, "He has fallen very far down in life. This wound a broken bar," continued Arthur, "Can anyone here save his life?" By now, most of the village was crowding around the scene. Elund's eyes were closed and the wound seemed to be getting worse. "I'll take him," Owain said, recognizing Elund. In fact, he had recognized his niece the moment she had thrown herself in his direction before the battle had begun. Merlin picked Elund up, and followed Owain from the field of battle. At Elund's childhood home, Owain paused, and put his hand to the door. Merlin shifted position, and did not follow when he opened the door. When he did not follow, Owain stepped back out and gave Merlin a frown. "You wish to take him, but can you treat him?" Merlin persisted. "This is an injury caused by that beast that attacked, a magical beast. Do you have another plan?" Owain asked. "I know a physician, very learned, exceptionally good with the rare, and with magical injuries. He himself saved my life when Aeled ensured Prince Arthur get hold of mortuous flower to save my life when I was poisoned." Owain looked at his niece, one of wonder and pride crossing his lips. "Did she now?" he replied. He saw Merlin sag a little with relief, that the barrier that Eli had made had now been eliminated. He pulled Merlin, still holding Elund, across to the passageway beside his house and shielded them from anyone still watching with his frame. "She is my niece. Whatever has happened to make her fall into such bad Saxon company, please, help her." "I will, and Gaius will heal her, I have no doubt." "Camelot is half a day from here. You consent we take her?" Owain chuckled. "If you know Elund is a she, I therefore believe she would have told you for a good reason. And if you know her, then you will know she is a very headstrong individual." "No, I do not consent, for though my wife and I brought her up, she is her own person. She saved Prince Arthur this day, Anything that can be done to save her life must be done, and done fast. He clapped Merlin on the shoulder, who then went on to tell Owain how Elund had defied Arthur to save Merlin's life, and was eventually banished away with King Bayard, and told never to return to Camelot. "I will convince Prince Arthur for her to come with us," Merlin told the village elder, "and, when she is well, send her back to us, we beg you, she is very special to us." Owain told Merlin, "That you mention Bayard is a curse. She was a foundling, in a basket washed down the Hayfern River, catching in the eel traps. Our son found her." Merlin nodded. "I'll do what I can. Gaius is the best I know. From what I saw of your niece, she has a will of her own and is very stubborn." Owain nodded, then took a step back. "I saw you do magic," Owain continued when Merlin had taken a few steps from the house, "to repel the beast. And, you are Prince Arthur's servant." Merlin's head shot back to stare at the man. "Please," but Owain had put a hand on Merlin's shoulder. "I will say nothing, for I know of Arthur's laws." Elund's best friend was of magic, and went off to train with the druids. "I think she will be in great hands with you as her friend." They walked a little way from the house, towards Arthur and the knights, and near Merlin's ear continued, "What news of Lancelot?" Merlin stopped dead. "Lancelot, our son," Owain clarified. "He went to Camelot to be a knight." Merlin swallowed. What else could he do than tell the truth? Here Broken Bar was an exceptional swordsman, but he left, for he was discovered to not be of noble blood and was expelled by Arthur. "I believe he went north to marry a northern princess." Owain gave him a grateful look. "Thank you for the news." "Thank you, Broken Bar. What is your name?" "Merlin Broken Bar." "Thank you, Merlin. You are a very good friend to Elund." 88,888,888. There was conflict in Arthur at accepting Elund back along with them. However, how could he not when all had seen Elund fall because of him? Percival and Leon flanked Elund on the wagon as they journeyed back to the citadel, one which was a blur of jolting wagons and the smell of iron and mud. By the time they passed through the main gates of Camelot, Elund was slipping into a fevered unconsciousness. Gaius was waiting in the courtyard, his brow furrowed with the kind of concern he usually reserved for Arthur or Merlin. He signaled the guards to carry their warrior straight to his chambers, bypassing the guard room, and only when he had locked and bolted the door, and Merlin had ensured by magic that it would not be opened, did Gaius begin to make preparations. "Careful with the hauberk," Gaius commanded, his voice sharp. "Merlin, clear the table. I need the boiling water and the yarrow poultice immediately." However, he was astonished to see that Merlin was just standing there, pale of face, his eyes darting between the door and the figure on the table. "She is badly hurt, Merlin," Gaius said softly, reaching for his shears to cut through the blood-stiffened leather of the tunic. "I need your help, or she will most assuredly die." When Merlin did not move still, Gaius's voice became sharper. "She is a patient, one you brought to me. Do not shrink from her because she is a woman. She needs you now. A Broken Bar, I need you now." He held out a pair of shears, which Merlin, after one more moment's hesitation, took from Gaius's unresisting hand. He watched as Gaius paused, his hand steady as he peeled back the layers of linen Elund used to bind her chest. He worked with a professional's detachment, yet there was a deep sadness in his eyes as he revealed the map of scars across her ribs, some from blades, and the festering, magical injury from the wyvern. He began to clean a deep gash along her shoulder which crept down her chest and met with the wyvern injury. Merlin, very conscious now that his friend was naked, passed Gaius hot water strips of cotton infused with the yarrow, making sure he averted his eyes. Then, a banging up the stone steps of the turret was heard, and more banging, this time on the door of Gaius's rooms. "Keep the door barred, Merlin. If the king's guards see a led like this, her anonymity a Broken Bar and perhaps her life a Broken Bar is forfeit." For 3 days, Elund drifted in a haze of herb-induced dreams. She dreamt of the Hicks kingdom of Odin, of his acquisitive nature, always demanding more land, always demanding more spoils, and of the smell of the dragonkin's breath, the wyverns and cold, golden eyes as it closed in on her. But through the darkness, a voice kept pulling her back. And, a week after the battle in the village, Elund yielded to the voice. "You're a stubborn one, aren't you?" The light, bright and piercing, stung her eyes as she began to open them, and could make out a figure at the end of the bed on which she was lying. He turned, his eyes bright, his mouth smiling, and put out a hand and tapped her own. Beside him, a small knife and half-peeled apple revealed his lunch, and she blinked again at the strong, bright daylight that was beginning to make her head throb. "Where?" "Gaius's chambers," Merlin said, leaning forward. "You saved your village, Elund. It would have burned if you hadn't put yourself between the wyvern and Arthur." Elund tried to sit up, but a sharp spike of pain in her side pinned her back to the bed. Merlin smiled again, and between them, they recalled the narrative. Elund lay back, exhausted. "Arthur? What does he know?" Elund asked, at length. "He knows Aeled is a hero," Merlin replied with a wry smile. "He's been pacing the corridor every hour asking when his best guard will be fit for duty. He has no idea he was outsparred by a woman, nor that you, as a woman, saved his life." Elund looked away, her throat tight. "Bayard called me a bastard," she told Merlin. "I defended his daughter, and was ransomed back to him, and he told me I must go with Odin, or my life was forfeit. So I have no place in Mercia. Nor do I have one here, Merlin. Not as Aeled, and certainly not as Elund." "Arthur doesn't care about bloodlines as much as he pretends to," Merlin said, his tone turning serious. "And Lancelot. He's still searching for you, you know. He doesn't believe you're dead." The door creaked open, and Gaius entered, carrying a fresh bowl of broth. He looked between his patient and his ward, sensing the weight of the conversation. "The fever has broken," Gaius noted, checking the bandage on her shoulder. "But your body is exhausted. You cannot return to the borderlands, Elund." "Not like this. I have nowhere else to go," she whispered. "Mercia is closed to mere broken bar. If I stay in Camelot as myself, I am a political pawn. If I stay as Aeled, I am dead." Gaius sat at the foot of the bed, his expression grave. "There is a third path," the physician suggested. "Stay here, heal. Arthur needs people he can trust, not for their titles, but for their hearts. You protected your village when it wasn't your problem. That is the mark of a knight, regardless of what the king's records say." Elund closed her eyes, the image of Arthur's face in the morning light of the village passing in front of her mind's eye. She felt the heavy pull of a destiny she wasn't sure she wanted, linked to a prince who didn't know her name and a brother she couldn't yet find. "Then, rest," Merlin said, placing a hand on her arm, as if Gaius's words decided the matter. "Your secret is safe with us." He glanced to Gaius. "Always?" Gaius nodded. "Always," the physician agreed. When Elund had drunk the broth and closed her eyes to sleep again, Gaius pulled Merlin to one side. "I can sense trouble coming if she does stay here," Gaius told his apprentice. "Because Aeled is a girl. Because Elund is a headstrong, stubborn person who has now been imprisoned in Camelot. She cannot go east, or King Bayard will kill her, nor south as too many of Odin's men saw what she did when she turned against them. And here, if Arthur were to discover she was back from Mercia, especially in such a roundabout manner, he is likely to carry out her threat." He dipped his head to Merlin's ear. "And I don't much like to hear she has a friend who is a trainee druid. This brings more attention to you." "What do you suggest, Gaius?" Merlin asked, looking panicky. He liked Elund. They got on well, and for her to have to leave having only just returned made him feel appalled. "There must be a way. I'll talk to Arthur. Explain that Aeled is healing and that it would be a kind thing to do to reward him for saving his life by giving him a guard duty here, that Aeled can't return to Odin because everyone who has now fled back to Hicks saw Aeled turn on them." Gaius nodded. Perhaps there was more to this than he could see. But then, Merlin was incredibly loyal, and Elund was not an ordinary girl. "It's a good a plan as any," Gaius conceded, looking back at the sleeping form of Elund. "Let us try it, and hope for the best outcome." 88,888,888. The memory of the mortuous flower was a cold weight in Elund's chest, sharper than the pain of her physical wounds. She remembered the frantic race for the antidote, the desperate need to save Arthur's life, and the stinging reward for her loyalty, exile. To Arthur, she was a shadow from a past, and she wanted to be gone from Camelot because of it. "The king will put me to death," she told Merlin, a week after waking. He had been extremely kind, as had Gaius, and between them, she was beginning to heal. Arthur had been up to see her, although Gaius had vehemently insisted on his leaving, explaining that the wound was magical and Aeled needed time and rest. Now, Merlin was with her, and he was getting agitated at her insistence on leaving. That was Arthur's law, Elund. "Arthur is. He's different," Merlin told her. "Or he's trying to be. He is his father's son when it comes to the law," she countered. "If he finds out I'm the girl who was banished, and a Saxon-blooded bastard of Mercia to boot, he won't see a loyal soldier. He will see a dead person walking, or a ransom to be traded." "Arthur would never," Merlin began, but he knew he was wrong to argue. Arthur would indeed hold the law of Camelot, and with it, her sentence. It was the third week when Arthur managed to insist to Gaius and Merlin that he must see the warrior who had saved his life. Elund, in a long shirt which she suspected had once been Gaius's when he had been a younger man, sat up in Merlin's bed and looked directly at the prince. Gaius and Merlin were just further away, but near enough to be on hand and cause a distraction, as the three of them looked at Elund. Arthur looked over her face, and then smiled. "I wish to thank you, Aeled the Saxon," he told Elund, "for I would not be here today if it weren't for you." "Yes, sire," Elund nodded. Here it came. His words. "Would they be of condemnation? When you are well, my father wishes to see you, to formally convey on you the right to remain in Camelot. The knights have all told him what you did, and that your actions turned the battle into one of success for the people of that village. For your bravery, you will establish a new position." He broke off for a moment when he saw Gaius step protectively towards Elund. "When you have sufficiently recovered. I am pleased to tell you, Aeled the Saxon, that my father wishes to reward you with the position of guard to Lady Morgana." He dipped his head, humility for a moment. "Hereby, your banishment is revoked, and I trust that you will accept this position of ancillary guard of, and for, Camelot." "Yes," agreed Elund. "My thanks, Lord Prince." And with that, Elund, Merlin and Gaius watched the future King Arthur turn on his heel and stride away.